Well, we're back. The third in the reincarnation of the Free For All after party. This is not the official launch yet, though, right?
No, we're still waiting on that. I'm waiting on
our
word.
mugs are on video
yes.
while we're doing this.
So that's the teaser. So once we're on video, that will be the official launch, folks. And that's when things will get real. Mike and I are going to dress in like our dress down attire, maybe like just with a little more flair. You'll get to see us wear hats maybe from time to time or...
So you're telling me how to dress now, apparently. Okay, that's good to know. Finding hats that actually fit our melons
will be a challenge.
Is difficult. Mike Doocy with Sam Gannon. We host Free For All on TV every night on Fox 4, 10:30. And great to be back with you here on the podcast and a lot to talk about, most of it Cowboy related. We'll hear from Emmitt Smith in a moment. We had him on the show this past week. Sam, as far as I didn't see one person predict this type of game, this Saints thing,
literally,
the way that unfolded.
Literally all of America, every national analyst picked the Cowboys. No, I mean, no one saw this coming. Have they had bad losses before? Yes. The most recent one before this last one was the Packers loss, but I just wasn't expecting them to fall flat on their face like they did at home, considering how good they've played at AT&T Stadium, right?
It was a noon game, a noon home game, which is really unusual for the Cowboys. Unusual for us, too, because we had to start our workday really early. You went to the stadium. You and Jeff went to the stadium with our crew out there. I came into the studio. And I love driving on Sunday mornings, like on the highway in Dallas, because it's like driving on the moon. There's just nobody out there. We made it in record time. But what time did you leave for the stadium Sunday morning?
We left about 9. Yeah, that's a good thing that you mentioned, too, because I think people maybe wonder, well, what time do you get there for a noon kickoff? We got there at about 9:15, so right under 3 hours beforehand, because it's just fun to take in the atmosphere of the game. I've always liked being on the field pregame. I like to take videos of the players. I like to just see behind the scenes. You know, you get to see them in a little bit more of a loose environment. And Mike Tyson and Jake Paul were also there pregame.
Talk about an age gap and how the generation gap between somebody like you and somebody like me shows. I hear that combo and I think, oh my God, Mike Tyson, this iconic heavyweight champion. You think, oh, Jake Paul, the influencer, right? I had no idea what a big deal Jake Paul was in the social media world. The number of followers is like top 5 in the world, right?
That's what I was telling you. Like his YouTube page, he has over 20 million subscribers. You can hate him all you want, but you credit the guy. He's transformed this into a career, and he's a businessman too. And he has another brother, Logan Paul, that the Gen Zers know very well too. But I give him credit getting into the ring with Mike Tyson. He said it's going to be the biggest fight of his life. It's going to be broadcasted on Netflix. I'll definitely be tuning into it.
Yeah, Paul, it's funny because I was just looking at a list of the richest social media people. And I know that's a wide umbrella, but he's like top 5 in terms of money makers in that genre. And we all know Tyson and the colorful career he has had. It was kind of surreal seeing them on the field before the game, and Fox, of course, had a good time with it as well. But then the Cowboys had to play the game. I tweeted this. They always win the pregame. You know, Jerry had a photo with Tom Brady and Mike Tyson. Jerry always wins the pregame. The game itself didn't go so well, and I think people were stunned mostly because this Zimmer defense that we were raving about last week at this time was just horrible. I mean, they just got overpowered by Kamara and the Saints.
Yeah, it was shocking to see. It really was. And listening to some of the guys talk this week about it, effort is something that had been mentioned. And we were talking about this in the office, that effort, when you hear that word, you think, oh, it means guys aren't trying, right? And that's not necessarily the case. But they said they need all 11 guys to be on the same page when they're out on the field together. That goes for offensively, too. I mean, they got behind, and this team, when they get behind, they have a hard time rallying. And, you know, when the other team, meaning the Saints, scores 6 touchdowns in their first 6, I mean, you don't hear that.
No,
that doesn't happen.
No. And the effort thing, Micah's comments, he talked on Wednesday, And, he's a guy who always is given a juicy quote. And we both listened to him that day, and we didn't really hear anything that inflammatory, but some people picked it up and ran with the effort thing as though he was throwing his teammates under the bus. I think he was criticizing effort, including his own. And Overshone yesterday, I thought, explained it well. And maybe it's just wordplay, semantics, but as you said, effort doesn't necessarily mean that you're, being lazy from the beginning to the end of the game. It might be just that you're out of position and unable to put in the type of effort you need to, because you're blocked out of a play in a certain way that makes it look like the effort isn't there. But bottom line, it casts a lot of doubt over the Zimmer defense for now. That can all change on Sunday against Baltimore. But when you get run for 190 yards on the ground, that's kind of where football all begins. It's a cliche, but run the ball when you want to, stop the run when you have to, and neither of those happen.
They only rushed for 68 yards on the ground, and that's what everyone is going to be watching come Sunday against the number one rush defense so far this season, which is in the Baltimore Ravens. When you talked about Micah's comments, just really quick, listening to how he talked about it and how they ran with it yesterday, making a bigger deal. I don't even mind Micah calling out his teammates a little bit. I think sometimes that's needed. And we both listened to it. He did it in a way that was still professional. I'm sure he talked to the guys. I bet you what he told reporters is no different from the conversations that he had with those guys during the game, after the game, and leading up to the game this week. I mean, he's one of the faces of this team, so I don't have a problem with him doing that.
He's going to rub guys the wrong way sometimes. It was Malik Hooker that had the issue with him, right? And there are going to be times, whether it's on the podcast or in the media scrum at the Star, where Micah says things in a way that other guys won't like. But Micah's who he is. He's a top-tier guy. And, he needs to back it up with his play on the field as well. He would be the first to admit that. And Dak in this offense, we talked about it last week, they weren't very good in the second half against Cleveland. They were settling for field goals. And then that happened again for the entire game against New Orleans. You've got, and I hate to say this, you've got your $60 million a year quarterback, and you've got a kicker making less than $1 million a year, who's your most consistent offensive weapon right now. So the offense isn't in a good place either.
No, 2 touchdowns through 2 games. They went 0 for 3 in the red zone last weekend against the Saints. McCarthy put it quite simply. He said, we have to score more touchdowns. It's not that complicated. You got to get into the end zone and score. And we've seen this Cowboys offense do just that. I think to me, it was a little bit of a fluke performance. I know we're going to get to our predictions too, but I still believe that they're a lot better than what we saw last Sunday. I do. And I know that it was on the defense, but not having Jake Ferguson in the mix, not having your second leading receiver from a season ago, that does matter. Make no mistake about it. That has an impact on this offense.
One thing CeeDee Lamb said on Thursday, I was out there at the Star Thursday kind of rapping with some of the guys, getting caught up with them. They miss me when I'm not out there.
They do. They miss the Doocy.
And Lamb was talking about how they need to get the chemistry up again. So I did ask a follow-up on that. And so when you say chemistry, how do you restore that or something? And he said, well, just through practice. And he was specifically talking about chemistry between he and the quarterback. And he was essentially admitting that was lacking in part because he missed training camp, which is something I don't really need to hear right now, and fans don't want to hear.
But it is true.
You decided to do this, and if it's the type of thing that's going to cost you some completions and some big plays early in the year, that's kind of weak, frankly. But it is what it is. I'll give him credit
for owning it in that way.
We criticize these guys when they don't talk, and then criticize them when they do. So I guess that's unfair too.
Well, I guess you can look at it like if that's the truth in what he's saying, then that means it can only go up from here. Because as great as CD is, that this Dak and Lamb, they need to be much better. Like that's his number one guy.
And he is great.
Yeah,
and I think Lamb is going to be just a tremendous weapon for years to come, and I think they'll get it figured out in a hurry. You want to hear from Emmitt? Just real quick here. We had Emmitt Smith on the show on Thursday, and obviously one of the things we talked about was the running game, and Sam asked Emmitt about a specific runner.
Emmett, Dalvin Cook is on the team's practice squad right now. Should we be seeing Dalvin Cook, do you think? Is it time to give him a look and see what he can do?
I think it is time to activate Dalvin Cook so we can have 3 running backs that we can rotate in. And we need to take the time to put an emphasis on the running game, as well as, because we got CeeDee Lamb. That's a given. Ferguson's hurt, I believe. So I think Jake is hurt, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's hurt and he's been out, right? Yep. So he hurt himself in week 1, I believe it was, or in the preseason game. Either way it goes, we need Tolbert to step up and create spacing between his route running, separation that is. Brandon Cook needs to continue to evolve and do the things that he needs to do. But we need to find something that gives Dak the ability to not only just hunt for CeeDee Lamb, but to spread the ball around like he did in the Cleveland game. He spread the ball around to a lot of different players, and that's what's key. And for me, I think offensive coordinators need to evolve their thinking and utilizing some of their best players and put them in a position to make plays, whether it's through screens, whether it's have a back coming out of the backfield running pass routes, create one-on-one matchups, so we can take advantage of the talent that we have until we get all of the pieces that we need to have in place.
Obviously, the game has changed since you played, but still, it has to just pain you as the all-time leading rusher to watch a game like that where the Cowboys are just unable to sustain anything on the ground.
You know what has changed? The game hasn't changed. The game is still X's and O's and blocking and tackling. What has changed is the philosophy around what they do and how they go about doing it. We're in a pass-happy league. And every league, this league needs to justify the simple fact that I'm paying somebody $100 million, $200 million. And if that's the quarterback position, they got to justify by making sure that their quarterback is throwing the ball and getting the best value out of it. Most quarterbacks in the National League are not as good as Patrick Mahomes. But he can throw the ball all over the place. He got great talent around him. Look at the talent he actually has around him. Travis Kelce, the wide receiver core that they actually have. Speed breaking down the field. They got speedsters running 4-0s down the field, so they're blowing the top off the defense. So it creates space for Travis Kelce and other wide receivers to do their thing underneath. And the backside of the backfield. And Mahomes moves around enough, and he can throw across the field and everything else. So everybody don't have that as a talented position. With Dak Prescott, I think he is just as good as anybody and most effective as most quarterbacks in the league. We just got to put him in a position to where he can make plays and he can read the coverages and do things that does not force him to or give him the ability to grow mentally and see defenses from all different types of perspective and on the offense.
Emmett, the Ravens have Derrick Henry. Does it make you upset at all that the Cowboys didn't get him?
It really doesn't make me upset. Even though the Ravens have Derrick Henry, it doesn't upset me that we didn't get him, because I believe in Dowdle, I believe in Zeke, and I also believe in Dalvin Cook, and also believe in Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn may be little, but I definitely believe in he has the ability to see running lanes and make things happen. Now, with those 4 guys, there's things that we can do. And I would like to see our offense go downhill a lot more.
So back to the Cook thing, how bad must he look right now for them not to be tempted to elevate him? I don't know what the deal is there.
To me, if they go out on Sunday and they have less than 100 rushing yards, then it's time for a Dalvin Cook sighting. Absolutely. I don't think you can afford to have another bad rushing performance and then not switch things up. I don't know how you would stay the same at this point. Because now you're looking at, if that happens and they lose on Sunday, then you're looking at 1-2 on the season.
And you know what else you're looking at is even more pressure on Mike McCarthy. It was interesting. Collishaw in the Morning News the other day wrote a column about Belichick and how Belichick may have his pick of the 4 NFC East teams to choose from
That's a great
when this
point.
season is over. Giants would make all sorts of sense. That's what started for him, or early on anyway, with Parcells. The Commanders.
Mhm.
First year coach with Quinn. That might be a little bit of a different story. But even the Eagles, if it goes downhill there, but certainly the Cowboys and Jerry and Belichick. Oh my God, can you imagine? I was here for Parcells, and at least Parcells had a personality that kind of, in his own weird way, embraced the craziness of this franchise. Belichick would have no time for the garbage.
He'll have no part in it. One of my favorite things, when he was at the Pats, was listening to his post. And I would feel for those reporters, though, because he doesn't play. There's no more joke. There's no laughter. Even Mike McCarthy, he'll laugh and joke with the reporters from time to time. You're not getting that from Bill. You're just not if he comes here.
No, absolutely not. And to be honest, I don't think he ever will come here. I think
You don't?
It's fun speculation. I don't
think he'll go to another team?
Yeah, I think he'll coach again, but I don't think Jerry would hire him. But I never thought he'd hire Parcells.
Why don't you
he
think he
needed
would?
to get a stadium built back then, so he needed a big name coach to come in.
But why don't you think he would hire him, especially when Jerry has talked so highly of him and they've talked about why don't you think he would?
I think for the very reasons we're discussing, that he knows what a battle it would be to try to get Belichick in any way to buy into some of the off the field stuff that goes on. And Jerry wants to have fun with the promotions and the.
But does McCarthy really do that?
Paul and Mike Tyson, no, but he doesn't push back in a way that Belichick would. Again, just my opinion.
Just a little fun here.
But so you've got the Ravens at the Cowboys on Sunday. Then they play the Giants on the road on a Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go to Pittsburgh. You're going to that game, and then you've got the Lions before the bye. So I think when I looked at the schedule to begin with, I kind of thought 3-3 probably heading into the bye, and that could still be the case.
Yeah.
Because then after the bye, it's pretty salty. Niners, Falcons, Eagles, Texans.
That's going to be it.
Yeah.
That is going to be a talent. This schedule for them is really tough this year, but that stretch in particular is going to tell you a lot about this Cowboys team and where they're at.
So if they're 2-4 heading into that, that could be a little bit rough.
I was gonna say, is there a scenario you think? You've been around covering this franchise for years and years and years now, and continue to do so.
Thank you. Stop rolling your eyes.
Do you see a scenario if they get to 2-5, 2-6, 2-7? Do you think we could see a head coach getting fired? I'm not saying you will. I know you love to say I like head coach Mike McCarthy, but I'm saying if you're in a situation what situation would warrant a mid-season fire, do you think?
Yeah, I think 2-7, Jerry would definitely think about it. I really do. Hard to believe given the fact they won 12 last year. Trying to think the year that Wade Phillips got fired during the middle of the season, what the previous year had been. Jerry certainly would not want to do it. I don't know if he'd promote Zimmer or exactly what would happen, but it's probably premature to bring it up anyway. So anyway, it's kind of unusual that a game this early in the season means this much to both teams. Ravens haven't won. Cowboys can't afford to go to 1-2. I mean, they're two teams that are kind of desperate right now.
It's going to be a game of it's probably going to have a little bit of a playoff feel just for that very reason, as you mentioned. The Ravens have only gone 0-3 once in their franchise history back in 2015. So I just know that the Cowboys are really good after a loss. They have a really good win percentage after a loss, and they respond well. Do we say our picks now?
Just do it. Yeah. What do you think? You can go first. You're 1-1 in your predictions this year. I think I'm 0-2.
I'm picking Cowboys 24-21.
All right.
I don't think that's a bad prediction.
You don't have to, justify it. Don't get defensive. That's fine. I don't think it's a bad prediction either. I went back and forth on this one in my mind.
Same.
And I am going to pick Baltimore. It comes down to this for me. I can't imagine this Baltimore team still having Lamar, now having Henry at running back, having a really good defense. I cannot imagine them starting 0-3. And I don't know what the Cowboys are going to figure out between last week and this week in terms of trying to stop a good running attack, which Baltimore has. So I think a 30-27 type game for the Ravens. So I will pick Baltimore. Jeff picks Baltimore. Poppy the dog picks Baltimore as well.
I'm alone on an island. I'm fine with it. And by the same token, I just have a hard time seeing the Cowboys losing back-to-back home games.
Mm-hmm.
The last time that happened when Dak was starting was 2020. It's been a minute since they've lost back-to-back home games.
Last time they lost back-to-back regular season home games.
2020
Yeah.
when he was the starter. But again, it's going to be too, what kind of start do they get out to? Because they don't play well from behind. You know, do they get other guys involved offensively? What does this rushing attack look like for them on the offensive side as well?
I think one thing to look for, and I caught this in Dak's post-game remarks last week, and I followed up with the quarterback asking him about it the other day, and that is, you know, what can you do to help the run game maybe with your legs?
Mm-hmm.
And Dak had volunteered at the podium after the game last week, kind of finding fault with his own performance, saying there are times where I can run the ball, I can scramble a little more, I can make something out of a play that looks like it's going nowhere, and you keep a pass rush honest that way. You keep a defense in general honest. And Dak's never going to be confused with Lamar in terms of speed or elusiveness or anything, but he's mobile enough that especially earlier in his career, he would run it a little bit. He had the horrible injury, of course, and has, you know, tempered it since then. But I think it can be more of a part of his arsenal than it has been. But bottom line is they need to have a running back run the ball. And I don't know where that's going to come from all of a sudden here either.
They don't have a guy that's rushed for more than 56 yards.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a major focal point.
And nobody's excited about this when I say it. He talks about McCarthy running back by committee. He said the problem is not enough attempts now, and he means that it's because of the situation in the game they were forced to throw the ball. I think you need, and committee I guess is okay, but if you've decided already that Zeke really isn't going to be the guy other than in short yardage or goal line situations, then feed Dowdle.
Yeah.
Then see if Dowdle
can do it.
not necessarily an every down back, but a featured back.
Right.
Because to me, of the guys who are active now, he's the closest they have to that.
You have to be willing to mix it up at this point because what you've done the last two games isn't working. And if it doesn't work again this Sunday, then you're really going to have to go back to the drawing board and activate Dalvin Cook.
In a situation where you have Deuce Vaughn and Cavante Turpin on the field at the same time, both as
Speedy.
weapons, you know, I guess on paper that looks like it might work, but it sure didn't work. It sure didn't work last week. Bottom line, they need more variety in offense. Dak to CD, that's going to be fine. Ferguson, once he's healthy, that's going to be fine. But Cooks needs to contribute. Some of these other receivers need to contribute, and a running back or two needs to contribute.
But can you imagine, come Monday morning, the headlines are going to go one of two ways. It's either they're going to be back on the upward trend, like they came back, they played well, or it's going to even be worse than what the headlines were this past weekend. Everyone was coming for them this week.
And I could see a situation, and you know this, Baltimore's a good team. So if it's a close game like I'm predicting and Dallas loses, I don't think there'll be quite the overreaction that there would be if they get blown out. But I'm not ruling out the possibility that they get blown out. And we got to go here, but here's a question. Would you be more surprised if they blew Baltimore out or if Baltimore blew them out at this point? If it's a one-sided game, who do you think's more likely to win it on Sunday?
Baltimore, I think, if it's a blowout
Isn't
situation.
that weird? And I don't blame you for picking Dallas. I
Yes,
almost did too. And I think Dallas could win the game, but they seem so fragile right now coming out of that.
That's
New
why
Orleans
I
game.
do think it's going to be a closer game. But if you were to ask me that, then I would say Baltimore.
All right. So I've got the Ravens. Sam has the Cowboys. We're talking about it every night on Free For All on TV at 10:30 and at 10 o'clock, just to confuse you, 10 o'clock on Sunday nights. So get our game wrap up at a special time, 10 o'clock. All right. And I didn't make eggs this week, but I'll try to next week and get back to you.
Have a good one, folks.
See ya. Bye-bye.